What is going on, everyone? Hope you're all doing well. Today is RTX 4070 Ti embargo/review day, so we're going to be taking a look at the 4070 Ti from NVIDIA and comparing it up against the latest cards from AMD as well as the RTX 4080 to help you guys make a better purchase decision in 2023 on what graphics card you should be picking up. And sorry for the brief hiatus that I've had. I had the Christmas holiday and everything, went away to Pittsburgh, saw the Raiders and Steelers game in person, which was fantastic, freezing cold, and then my fiance and I came back and we both had the flu for the last week, so it's been eventful. But let's kick things off in 2023 with a killer review of the 4070 Ti for the gamers out there. Let's get into it. But first, today's video is brought to you by Keysfan.com and their software super deal where you can get some of the best prices out there on Microsoft software. Especially with my coupon code, you can get half off of Windows keys as well as 62% off on Microsoft Office products like Windows 10 Pro, Windows 11 Pro, and Office 2019 Professional Plus and Office 2021 Professional Plus. And they've also got a bundle with Windows 10 Pro and Office 2019 in the same package. To save money on Windows 10 Pro, just go ahead and add the key to your cart, which starts off at $15.17. But once you get into your cart, you can go ahead and apply my discount code at checkout YTB50, and that will give you a shocking 50% off, bringing the price down to just over $7 at $7.58. And when you proceed to checkout, you can pay with either a credit card or PayPal, whichever one happens to fit your needs. And this also applies to Microsoft Office products, but again, you're going to get 62% off on Office products with the code YTB62 at checkout. Applying that to the $67.40 price, Office 2019 brings the price down to a stunning $25.61. So I don't know what you're waiting for. If you need your software keys, head over to Keysfan.com right now and be sure to use those coupon codes at checkout. YTB50 on Windows products for half off and YTB62 for 62% off on Microsoft Office products. So as everyone knows, the 4070 Ti is essentially the 4080 12GB card, which was unlaunched by NVIDIA after a lot of negative feedback for the pricing of it and the naming of the 4080 12GB graphics card. So there was a lot of controversy around it, and NVIDIA ended up, holding back on it and deciding to rebrand it now as the 4070 Ti, as well as giving it a price drop down to $799 MSRP, undercutting the competition from AMD with their 7900 XT card by $100. So that might actually do NVIDIA some favors here with this launch. Now, of course, there's going to be several different variants of the 4070 Ti, and some will cost more than $800 MSRP. My review model was actually the Asus Tough OC edition, which is an $850 model. There is a non-OC edition version of this card, which is $800, but then there's also our two different ROG Strix cards going for $950 and even over $1,000. So there's going to be quite a few different variants out there, as there's no Founders Edition this time around for the 4070 Ti, which I think was the best card for all the 4090s and 4080s. The Founders cards just were above and beyond in terms of cooling, aesthetics, and price, honestly, as they sell at the the base MSRP for those cards. So a little disappointing we didn't get a Founders Edition card for the 4070 Ti. But I did get this triple slot Asus Tough Behemoth, which still has the 12 VHPWR power connector on the side. So you need the adapter that came along with the card, despite only using two 8-pin power connectors, which kind of begs the question as to why we just didn't plug in two 8-pin power connectors like we did previously. The only conceivable reason is to save money on the PCB and to keep things consistent with the rest of the 40 series launch, but all in all, kind of seemed like a pointless addition to have that 16-pin plug on the side of the card that, obviously with just two 8-pin power connectors, we could have just kept it the way that it used to be, and we could have avoided any issues with people's cables setting on fire. With that out of the way, of course, you guys, as well as myself, are here to learn about how the 4070 Ti stacks up in the current market with the RTX 4080 out there selling for $1,200. We've got the 7900 XTX at $1,000 and the 7900 XT coming in at $900. So we've got a nice, neat little stack of cards to compare here so you guys can figure out what is the best way to go with your budget in 2023. So testing at 4K, 1440p native resolution, no ray tracing or anything. We'll have some synthetics as well as ray tracing tests in a few select titles, just like we did with the 7900 launch. So all the same testing methodology as compared to that, testing these cards at stock settings, no alterations or anything like that, using the Ryzen 9 7950X CPU, along with 32 gigabytes of DDR5 memory at 6,000 megahertz, so we shouldn't be seeing any significant CPU bottlenecks in there at all when testing on the various different graphics cards. And we will kick things off with 4K native resolution ultra presets, no ray tracing with our average FPS. Then we'll get into the 1% lows, followed by the 1440p numbers, and then we'll discuss ray tracing performance, which, as you guys would guess, does favor NVIDIA once again. But without ray tracing in rasterized performance, the 7900 XT actually did better compared to the 4070 Ti than the 7900 XTX did compared to the 4080, if that makes sense. The 4080 and the 7900 XTX definitely traded blows in rasterized performance in some titles, although it did, in the majority of titles, did favor the XTX. But with the 4070 Ti versus the 7900 XT, it is a much more clear-cut winner here, with AMD taking the lead in traditional rasterized performance, even though it is not by a significant margin in most of the titles that I tested here, and NVIDIA actually did win out on Guardians of the Galaxy, which is unsurprising as AMD has some treacherous 1% lows in that particular title, so that is going to be taken into account there, of course. But looking at Assassin's Creed Valhalla, we have the 7900 XT getting 82 FPS compared to the 74 of the 4070 Ti, and I feel like this is really the closest matchup that we need to be taking a look at here, as these cards are only $100 apart in value, and there's going to be several 4070 Ti variants selling for $900 and upwards. So I feel like that is the fairest comparison that we currently have to make, unless AMD comes out with a card for $800 MSRP as well. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, again, this did favor the 7900 XT, but only by 3 frames per second, as the 4070 Ti fell behind by 3 FPS. But also worth noting is that the 7900 XT does have more VRAM and a larger memory bus. The 4070 Ti is stuck with that same 192-bit bus that was plaguing the reputation, I should say, of the 4080 12GB, which all stuck around here with this. We got a price drop, but the specs are all the same. Cyberpunk 2077 actually sees a pretty commanding lead here for the 7900 XT at 55 FPS versus 44. F1 2022 on 4K is not going to be a problem for either one of these cards, but the XT did win out here at 147 versus 132. Far Cry 6, unsurprisingly, this is an AMD optimized title and did favor AMD here more than in most of the other games here, getting a win at 91 versus 83 FPS of the 4070 Ti. Horizon Zero Dawn, pretty much an insignificant difference of 1 FPS between these two cards. As I said, Guardians of the Galaxy did edge out for NVIDIA, but only by 1 frame per second, again, an insignificant margin. And Watch Dogs Legion also did actually favor the 7900 XT. So it seems like in traditional rasterized performance, AMD is pulling ahead with a stronger victory here compared to the 4070 Ti versus with the 4080 and XTX, where you were really splitting hairs and it just kind of depended on the game. Looking at the 1% lows here, we don't see anything too surprising compared to the average FPS, apart from, of course, as I mentioned, Guardians of the Galaxy. This reared its ugly head back on the 7900 launch as well, where it was getting massive 1% lows. As in Guardians of the Galaxy, AMD just has some driver issues and gets some really, really bad frame drops from time to time that really just butcher the overall performance numbers, even though their average may be quite high. The game stutters and hitches all over the place on AMD cards with their drivers, so that's something they definitely need to iron out there, but that is really the only outlier from all the testing that really stood out to me as far as 1% lows are concerned. Taking a look at 1440, which one might argue is a much better sweet spot and niche for the $800, $900 price point, which is crazy to say, because if just a few years ago you would have been looking at like a $400 or $500 GPU if you were looking to play games at 1440p, and now we're talking about nearly $1,000 in order to be able to play all the latest and greatest titles, even without ray tracing. Although you could see all these cards here, and even more so focusing again on the 7900 XT and the 4070 Ti, that they are very strong performers here at 1440p, are going to get you a considerable amount of performance and getting over 100 frames per second in almost every title here tested at average, apart from Cyberpunk 2077. The 4070 Ti had an average of 99 FPS in that particular title. So that could be a memory bus limitation there, as we're seeing the other cards so much closer together. But Cyberpunk on the 4070 Ti did fall behind quite a bit, just like it did in 4K. In Modern Warfare 2, the 4070 Ti actually pulled out a one-frame victory here over the 7900 XTX, despite losing at 4K, which I thought was interesting. But all the other games here were getting well over 100 FPS, and unsurprisingly, the 7900 XT did win out in most of the games it rasterized, apart from Guardians of the Galaxy again, favoring NVIDIA heavily here, winning by 10 frames per second. And then, of course, Modern Warfare 2, as previously mentioned, NVIDIA won there by an insignificant margin, just 1 frame per second, which falls within the margin of error. And I'll put up the 1% lows here now if anyone wants to sift through those and figure out the lows for all of these games here. But as you can see, 1440p, not going to be an issue, as the 1% lows are well north of 60 frames per second on all of the 8 titles that I tested, apart from Guardians of the Galaxy on AMD graphics cards. Just a big problem there for the AMD cards, so they need to work that one out. Moving on to ray tracing, this is going to tell a much different story, as the only title that favored AMD here, unsurprisingly, Far Cry 6, which is an AMD optimized title and uses Microsoft DXR as its ray tracing solution, essentially a software-based ray tracing solution, not a hardware-based ray trace solution, which will always favor NVIDIA because they actually use hardware to accelerate their ray tracing, believe it or not. As crazy as it sounds, they actually do it the right way. It's a crazy concept and all that, doing things correctly, but NVIDIA's a wild card, aren't they? But they do win out significantly with ray tracing, as expected, like we saw in the 7900 launch not too long ago. Cyberpunk here, even though that was trailing behind in rasterized, it went up by 2 FPS, still pretty much unplayable at 4K without the use of DLSS, or something like frame generation, which NVIDIA has, AMD does not. So F1 2022, even that favored the 4070 Ti here with ray tracing. Guardians of the Galaxy, again, not too surprising, as well as Watch Dogs Legion. And we'll go ahead and jump into the 1% lows here now as well, if you want to take a look at that and sift through the data on the 1% lows. But it pretty much gives the picture that ray tracing is going to be very difficult on these cards, at least at 4K. 1440p is going to be manageable, especially bringing in things like DLSS and all of that. Looking at the 3D Mark Speedway test that was fairly recently released around the time of the 40 series launch, and I believe it was October or November. God, that feels like ages ago, and it was like literally yesterday. RTX 4080 winning out quite well here in this, as this uses ray tracing, so not too surprising, getting 7082, a significant lead over the AMD cards, even though we know in rasterized game performance, these cards are a lot closer, and the XTX actually wins out in most games. When you throw on ray tracing, NVIDIA just starts to really pull ahead quite significantly, and as these tests do use ray tracing, it's not too surprising that they are winning out here, as well as on the 3D Mark Port Royal ray tracing test, the 4070 Ti pulling in 13,556 versus the 12,898, of the 7900 XT. So a little bit closer of a battle there between the 700 XT and the 4070 Ti, but still a victory there for NVIDIA when it comes to ray tracing performance. So final thoughts and conclusions on all the gaming performance numbers for the 4070 Ti and the 7900 XT. Which one would I go with? Again, it's really going to come down to personal preference. Do you want ray tracing? If you want ray tracing, there's only one choice. You have to go NVIDIA. You just have to. But also, there's other parts of that the NVIDIA ecosystem, which I do think offer some benefits as well. DLSS is better than FSR. NVIDIA has frame generation. AMD said they will with FSR 3, but that's not coming until later this year. We don't know exactly when. So as of right now, that's just a promise, which means it's not real. NVIDIA has frame generation, which I think is a significant selling point, as much as a lot of haters want to just say that it's fake and yada, yada, yada. The bottom line is when I boot up a game like Cyberpunk or Spider-Man or Flight Sim, and my frame rate is in the 40s, and I could turn this on and get double that, and I can't perceive any differences whatsoever in real time, that is a huge selling point to me for some more demanding titles that could be coming down the pipeline if they offer frame generation in them. So for me, that would be a huge selling point, and the one reason why between a 4070 Ti and an XT, I might consider 4070 Ti. But honestly, I wouldn't put myself in that price bracket anyway. I still think the 4090 represents, even though it's $1,600, I still think it represents the best value of all the cards that have come out when you consider how much faster it is than these cards. But again, not everyone can spend $800, let alone $1,600 on a card. So it's not very realistic to spend double the price for something if you can barely, hang around this $800 price point. So you're going to have to take a look at all these numbers and sort of figure it out for yourself and what matters to you. I think we've seen a lot of sales for the XTX, so a lot of people have decided, or I guess going in the direction of which getting the best rasterized performance out there and not really worrying too much about ray tracing, although I think that's kind of setting yourself up for failure for future titles, as I think they're going to become more reliant on things like ray tracing and frame generation to be able to get better performance, as it can be an amazing crutch for PC development and performance optimization. So I just kind of see it going that way in the next few years or so. But overall, the 4070 Ti was a solid performer, and also let's not forget that it is coming in at $100 less than the 7900 XT. That can't be understated. It's $100 less. Of course, there's going to be other models out there that are going to cost more than that, but you'll probably be able to find a fair few models from all the different manufacturers selling for around $800, and it's still going to be a decent value at that price, considering the current landscape and the market. Not previous years, but considering what's going on right now, you kind of have to think of it as like, well, I'm spending $800 to essentially get what is almost equal to, if not slightly better than a 3090 Ti, but you get frame generation, but you also get fewer, less VRAM and the smaller memory bus. So a couple of caveats there, but when it came down to it and just, playing games, it performed roughly on par with the 3090 Ti, although that could be an issue if you're getting into higher resolution stuff like 4K. For 1440p, I don't see it being too much of an issue, but if you're going to play at higher resolutions, it certainly could be. So that's all I've got for you guys on the RTX 4070 Ti. Please let me know your thoughts and everything down in the comments below on what you're planning on picking up. We've pretty much got the full picture now of all of the GPUs that we were expected to see announced, although in about an hour or so, NVIDIA's doing an event from CES, so who knows if they might announce a 4070 or a 4060 or something along those lines to keep people on the hook and, waiting to see all the reviews for all the cards as they come out. And maybe we'll see something come out for $500 or $600 from CES. It's very possible. An hour from now, I should say, they're going to do. By the time you're watching this, it'll already be out from NVIDIA. So there it is. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, though, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And if whatever NVIDIA is announcing at CES has altered the entire fabric of this review, who knows? But I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.